Heath Ledger's Uber driver changes his life. What happens during that ride is incredible. November 3rd, 2004. Venice, Italy. Heath steps into a taxi after a disastrous Casanova rehearsal. He has no idea this ride will save his career. What the driver tells him transforms everything. Heath thinks about comedy and art. The rehearsal was a nightmare. Heath couldn't find the lightness, couldn't access the charm. Director Lasse Hallström looked frustrated after every take. "You're playing Casanova like Hamlet," Hallström said bluntly. "Where's the joy? Where's the seduction?" Heath doesn't know where the joy is. He's spent years building his reputation on serious dramatic roles. The Patriot, Monsters Ball, A Knight's Tale's romantic scenes felt forced enough. Now he feels like a fraud, attempting pure comedy. "I'm not funny," Heath mutters to his assistant after rehearsal. "I don't know how to be charming." He calls for a taxi to Marco Polo Airport, wants to fly back to New York immediately, maybe drop out of the project entirely. The car arrives 15 minutes late. A beat-up Fiat driven by a man in his 60s with wild gray hair. "Aeroporto?" the driver asks in heavily accented English. "Yes," Heath replies tersely. Fast as possible, but Venice traffic moves at its own ancient pace. The taxi crawls through narrow streets, barely wide enough for pedestrians. "You look like someone who lost something important," the driver observes, studying Heath in the rearview mirror. Heath doesn't want conversation. "I'm fine." "Ah," the driver smiles knowingly. "Fine." The most dishonest word in any language. Despite himself, Heath looks up. The driver has kind eyes and an amused expression that suggests he's seen everything. "I'm Marcus Williams," the driver says, "and you are carrying grief like an old winter coat." "Heath," he replies reluctantly, "and I'm not grieving anything." "No?" Marcus navigates around a water taxi loading area with practiced ease. "Then why do you hold your shoulders like Atlas holding the world?" Heath realizes Marcus speaks perfect English despite the earlier accent. "You're not Italian," Heath observes suspiciously. "American. Originally, been in Venice 42 years. Started as an actor, stayed as a philosopher and part-time taxi driver." But what Marcus says next stops. Heath cold. "Let me guess. You're here trying to be funny, but you think comedy is beneath your artistic dignity." Heath stares at the rear-view mirror. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've driven 1,000 actors to this airport over the years, all running from the same thing, which is the terror of being laughed with instead of being taken seriously." Heath feels completely exposed by this stranger. What's wrong with wanting to be taken seriously? Marcus pulls over beside a quiet canal, turns to face Heath directly with surprising intensity. "Nothing wrong with it. But you're confusing serious with joyless. They're not the same thing at all." Heath looks out at the Venice waterways, feeling lost. "I don't know how to be funny. I don't know how to be light." "That's because you think funny means foolish," Marcus explains patiently. "But the greatest comedians understand something tragic actors often miss." "What's that?" "Comedy is the highest form of truth-telling. It takes more courage than drama." But what Marcus reveals about his own past changes everything he thought he knew about performance and authenticity. "I played Arlecchino for 15 years at Teatro San Marco," Marcus explains. Heath shakes his head, embarrassed by his ignorance. "Italian comedy tradition, 400 years old. Arlecchino is the fool, the servant everyone mocks and underestimates." Marcus's voice grows distant with memory. "I thought I was wasting my classical training playing a clown. Wanted to do Shakespeare, Ibsen, Serious work. What changed your mind? One night, after a particularly physical performance, an old woman approached me backstage. Marcus stares out at the canal, remembering. She said Arlecchino reminded her of her dead husband, how he used joy and humor to heal everyone's pain during the war. Heath listens intently, feeling something shift inside. That's when I understood. Marcus continues. Comedy isn't about being funny. It's about being brave enough to find light in the darkest places. Heath feels tears forming. But what if people don't take you seriously anymore? What if they think you're just a lightweight? People who matter will take you more seriously, Marcus replies firmly, because they'll see your courage to be vulnerable. Marcus restarts the engine, but instead of heading to the airport, he drives deeper into the city center. Where are we going? Heath asks nervously. To show you something that will change how you understand Casanova forever. They stop outside Teatro La Fenice, Venice's famous opera house, its golden facade glowing in the late afternoon light. Giacomo Casanova performed in this theater, Marcus explains, getting out of the taxi. Not as an actor, as himself. Heath follows, confused. What do you mean, performed as himself? Casanova wasn't just a lover. He was a storyteller, an entertainer, a man who turned his failures and embarrassments into captivating entertainment. Marcus leads Heath through the stage door, somehow having access to the empty theater. How do you know the security guard? Heath asks. I volunteer here twice a week, teaching commedia dell'arte to local children, Marcus explains. The greatest gift you can give a child is permission to be silly. The theater is empty, ornate, intimidating. Red velvet seats stretch in perfect rows. Stand on that stage, Marcus instructs. Why? Trust me. Heath walks onto the stage reluctantly. The empty seats stretch before him like silent judgment. Now tell me about your worst audition. Marcus calls from the orchestra section. I'm not doing this. Heath protests, feeling foolish. Tell the story like Casanova would tell it. With joy in the disaster, with love for the absurdity. But something about the empty theater feels safe, sacred even, like a confessional for performers. Heath begins describing his audition for The Patriot. How nervous he was meeting Mel Gibson, how he forgot his lines completely and just stood there. I just froze, Heath says, his voice echoing in the ornate space, completely blank. Mel Gibson staring at me like I was broken. What happened next? Marcus calls encouragingly. I started apologizing, over and over, saying sorry for wasting his time, sorry for being unprepared, sorry for existing. And then, Heath remembers, starting to smile. Gibson started laughing, not mean laughing, but genuine amusement. Why was he laughing? Heath thinks about it carefully. Because I was so earnestly, dramatically sorry, like I'd personally ruined his entire movie with my 30 seconds of blankness. And what did Gibson say? He said, my honest panic was more interesting than any prepared monologue. That real vulnerability always beats fake confidence. Marcus climbs onto the stage, moving with surprising grace for his age. You see, your vulnerability became your strength. Heath realizes he's been smiling while telling the story, feeling lighter than he has in weeks. That's what comedy is, Marcus explains. Vulnerability transformed into connection. Fear turned into shared laughter. But Casanova isn't vulnerable. Heath protests. He's confident, charming, always in control. No, Marcus corrects gently. Casanova uses charm to hide his profound vulnerability, just like you use dramatic intensity to hide yours. The theater lights dim as evening approaches. Marcus sits on the stage beside Heath, both men's legs dangling over the edge. "Tell me about today's rehearsal," Marcus says gently. "What really happened?" Heath describes his struggles in detail, how forced and artificial everything felt, how the director's visible frustration made everything worse. "The more I tried to be charming, the more wooden I became," Heath admits, "like watching myself fail in slow motion." "You were trying to perform confidence instead of finding it," Marcus observes. "There's a crucial difference." "What's the difference?" "Performed confidence is rigid, calculated, desperate. Real confidence is playful, curious, generous." Marcus stands up and begins moving around the stage with loose, fluid gestures that transform his entire presence. Casanova doesn't try to be charming. He simply loves people, loves stories, loves life itself. Heath watches Marcus transform before his eyes. The elderly taxi driver becomes graceful, magnetic, completely alive. "How do you do that?" Heath asks, genuinely amazed. "I stopped trying to be good and started trying to be present." Marcus spends the next 2 hours teaching Heath breathing exercises used in commedia dell'arte, ways to find physical lightness, methods for accessing joy, even when feeling serious or scared. The body teaches the mind, Marcus explains while guiding Heath through movement exercises. They work on Casanova scenes, with Marcus playing various characters. Heath practicing with Marcus's patient guidance. "Don't perform the charm," Marcus coaches. "Find what Casanova genuinely loves about each person he meets." Slowly, Heath begins to feel different, looser, more connected to something playful that's been buried inside himself. "The character isn't separate from you," Marcus explains. "He's a part of you that's been hiding, waiting for permission to come out." As they prepare to leave the theater, Heath realizes his entire relationship to the role has fundamentally shifted. "I don't want to go to the airport anymore," Heath admits. "Good," Marcus smiles warmly. "Venice has much more to teach you if you're willing to learn." Marcus drives Heath back to his hotel, but the lesson continues during the ride. "Tomorrow, come find me at Café Central at 10 in the morning," Marcus says. "We'll work on the love scenes." The love scenes? Casanova's secret isn't seduction technique. It's complete attention. He sees each woman as absolutely fascinating. Heath realizes he's been approaching all the romantic scenes completely wrong. "You've been trying to be charming instead of being interested," Marcus observes. "Charm is performance. Interest is presence." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus becomes Heath's unofficial life coach and artistic mentor, not teaching acting technique, but sharing life philosophy. Comedy comes from truth, Marcus teaches during their daily sessions. The deeper the truth, the bigger the laugh. Marcus shows Heath hidden Venice, away from tourist areas, places where real Venetians live and work and love. "Watch how people actually flirt in real life," Marcus suggests during lunch at a local cafe. "See the awkwardness, the humanity, the beautiful imperfection." Heath observes couples interacting, sees how real charm comes from genuine curiosity, not practiced smooth moves. Casanova works because he's actually fascinated by people. Heath realizes, exactly right. Your job isn't to be smooth, it's to be curious about everyone you meet. Marcus also helps Heath understand the historical Casanova through books and stories. He wasn't just a seducer, he was a writer, mathematician, philosopher, adventurer, a man trying to understand life through direct experience. This historical context transforms Heath's entire approach to the character. He seduces because he wants to know people completely. Heath explains to Marcus during one of their walks. Love is his method of research into human nature. Now you're thinking like Casanova, Marcus approves. Now you understand the curiosity behind the charm. When Heath returns to rehearsals, director Lasse Hallström immediately notices the dramatic difference. Where did you find him? Hallström asks after Heath's first transformed scene. Find who? Casanova. Yesterday you were imitating a character. Today you are living as him. Heath credits the breakthrough to understanding joy as a choice rather than a feeling that just happens. Marcus taught me that happiness is an act of courage. Heath explains to co-star Sienna Miller between takes. Who's Marcus? Sienna asks. My taxi driver. Also my accidental guru. The entire production atmosphere changes because of Heath's newfound lightness and confidence. His transformation affects everyone on set. Comedy is contagious, Heath observes to Jeremy Irons. When one person finds real joy, it spreads to everyone around them. Heath's relationship with Marcus deepens beyond professional coaching into genuine friendship and mentorship. You saved my entire career. Heath tells Marcus one evening over dinner at a small trattoria. No, Marcus replies thoughtfully. I just helped you find what was already there, waiting for permission to exist. Marcus shares more of his own life story. How he left Broadway success in the 1980s to find authentic artistic expression in Venice. I thought fame and recognition would make me happy, Marcus explains. But I discovered that happiness made me a better artist. Heath begins quietly sending money to support Marcus's community theater project for local children. Every kid deserves to discover their inner Arlecchino, Heath says, their permission to be silly and joyful. After filming Raps successfully, Heath maintains regular contact with Marcus, calls him before every challenging role for the rest of his career. What would Marcus say? Becomes Heath's internal question during difficult creative decisions. Marcus's influence appears clearly in all of Heath's subsequent performances, a lightness and authentic humanity that wasn't present in his earlier work. Heath found his sense of play after Venice, observes director Christopher Nolan years later. Something fundamental freed him up creatively. Marcus attends the Venice premiere of Casanova, watches Heath charm international audiences and critics with effortless grace. You did it, Marcus tells Heath afterward. You found the courage to be joyfully, authentically yourself. Heath dedicates his entire performance to Marcus during his acceptance speech at the Venice Film Festival. To Marcus Williams, who taught me that the highest form of art is authentic human connection and the courage to be vulnerable. Marcus continues driving his taxi in Venice and teaching children's theater, but now he's known throughout the film community as the driver who coaches movie stars. Other actors seek him out specifically. Word spreads through Hollywood about the wise taxi driver who helps artists find their authentic selves. Marcus changed how I think about performance in life. Heath tells journalists repeatedly, he taught me that vulnerability and strength are actually the same thing. The taxi ride that almost took Heath away from Casanova instead brought him home to his truest artistic self. Sometimes, getting lost is exactly how we find what we're really looking for, Marcus reflects years later. Heath's breakthrough in Casanova leads to increasingly complex, fearless role choices. His willingness to risk failure and embarrassment increases dramatically. Marcus taught me that the only real failure is not trying, Heath explains in interviews. Marcus Williams, the American expat taxi driver turned life philosopher, became the secret catalyst for Heath Ledger's complete artistic evolution. A 40-minute ride through Venice traffic became a masterclass in finding joy, courage, and authentic human connection in both art and life. The best teachers appear exactly when students are ready to learn. Marcus observes, Heath was ready to become who he was meant to be.